There are often some very obvious signs that someone won't finish a PhD. Now, I racked my brain thinking about all of the PhD students that didn't finish while I was doing my PhD or that didn't finish while I was a postdoc working in a university as a researcher. And the one thing that kind of united all of these people was isolation. They started to isolate themselves. It started quite innocently. It started as them not turning up to meetings every so often or ignoring emails or turning up later in the lab. The thing about a PhD and any research is you have to sort of like find this fine balance between doing the research, which is very sort of isolating in itself, sitting down, doing stuff on your own for hours, and then communicating that research to your supervisors, to other people, going to look for really interesting angles to a old problem. All of that means that you have got to sort of like be both a introvert and a kind of extrovert. You've got to be an ambivert, I think the word is. You've got to kind of like be an ambivert. And the one thing I saw about all the PhD students who started to fail is that the slippery slope started with isolation. And it may just start really innocently, but it is very quickly the path to just not doing anything, to avoiding interactions because you are worried that you're not doing it right. Like, that is the last thing you should do. You should be seeking help if you feel like you are failing, if you are struggling, and those that isolate themselves tend to fail quickly. This video is brought to you by my newsletter. Go check it out at andrewstapleton.com.au/newsletter. The link is in the description. When you sign up, you'll get 5 emails over about 2 weeks. Everything from the tools I use, the podcasts I've been on, my TEDx talk, and more is exclusive content for free on that newsletter. So go sign up now and I'll be in your email inbox soon. Another really obvious sign in someone that won't finish their PhD is if they cannot take any sort of criticism or take any advice on their research. Now, I talked about in another video about how sometimes you think your supervisor is absolutely stupid. You're like, why on earth are you telling me to do this? I know it won't work. But at the same time, you do have to take on criticism, especially early on in your PhD or your research. You do have to just lean on someone else who's got more experience, and that happens to be, most of the time, your supervisor or more senior researchers in the lab. Now, if you go into your PhD in your first year and you cannot take on criticism, or you don't have the ability to accept guidance, that is a very sort of obvious sign that you will struggle through your PhD and it will lead to failure. Now, the thing is that no one likes receiving criticism. No one likes to receive constant feedback about the things you're doing wrong, but that's unfortunately just what a PhD is like. Any researcher will tell you that it is a career of criticism, of failure, of being told you're not good enough, of receiving kind of less than helpful advice when you haven't asked for it. Unfortunately, that is the reality of doing any sort of academic or research-based careers, and if you cannot accept the guidance, you will almost certainly fail. There's another side of the PhD spectrum, which is the perfectionist. Now, I have come across this a number of times, and these people tend to forget what a PhD really is and what you need to do to actually achieve it. Now, when I was going through it, it wasn't often PhD by publication, so you would have to create a thesis, a nice big thick book like that you would hand in to some reviewers at the end abroad in a magical land called Europe, and they would give you some harsh criticism, and then they would say, but it's good enough to get a PhD. That is the goal. So this thing is not perfect. It is not a work of art. It hasn't even been proofread by a professional editor. It has just been proofread by the people that gave me feedback, i.e. my supervisors. Now, the thing is, I could probably open this book to any page right now and find something that's a little bit wrong or not quite right, or a capitalization in the wrong spot. Like, that is the reality of doing a thesis and handing it in. In fact, one of my reviewers said that there were loads of very annoying spelling mistakes. But did it detract from the science? No. Did it mean that I didn't get a PhD? No. So, perfection can get in the way of progress. And if you are sort of like agonizing over every single sentence in your thesis or your peer-reviewed paper or whatever it is, it will just stop you handing it in. Remember that the goal is to hand in something that other people will read and go, oh yeah, that's pretty good. This person deserves a PhD. And then you'll get it. It is not about producing perfect work. So if you are not able just to push something like this out that's good enough, you'll probably fail. There is a moment in any big project, whether it's academic or otherwise, where the negative voices in your head become louder. They start telling you that it is not possible to do what you're doing. If your experiments are not working, or even if they are working, that little voice in your head is just always sort of like echoing around, being like, well, maybe this isn't for you. Maybe you're not capable of it. But the thing is that there are tons of people, there are thousands of people, tens of thousands of people in every country across the world that are getting PhDs. And, the voices you do need to listen to sometimes if they're providing you with some good advice. If you're always feeling anxious about this certain area, you can just shed a light on it for a little bit, just to kind of be like, okay, well, what would happen if blah, 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 blah. But if it doesn't take you anywhere productive, it's time to ignore those voices. Now, I have sort of in my business life after a PhD, always had those little tiny voices that are always just niggling away and comparing you to other people. Why haven't I done that? Why haven't I achieved that? Why don't I get to that level? Why haven't I achieved that award that they got? Why aren't I on stage like this person? Like all of those things just keep on nattering away in your head. And I think the moment you start listening more to those negative things, or sort of giving more time to the negative components of your research or your project, and not listening or kind of really understanding the good bits, that's when you're on a slippery slope to failure. Now, one thing that I like to do, and it is a little bit kitsch, but it does really help, is a gratitude bullet point. Like, if I'm starting to feel pretty weird and down and the negative voices are getting louder and louder, and the thing is, the more you listen to them and the more you feed them, the louder they get. And I just like to sit down at the end of a week and just write down the things that are going well, and just sort of like retraining yourself really subtly really, really helps. So don't listen to those negative voices all of the time. If they're starting to pop up, just give them a moment. Think about whether or not they're there to help you or whether or not they're there to sabotage you. And then you have to kind of make a decision on to listen to change or to ignore and move on and keep going with your project. And that is a really sort of like weird balancing act to find. So yes, that is the reality of doing research or any big project. If you start listening to those negative voices, they could end up driving you under. Another sign that you won't succeed is if you just stop caring for your research project. Now, the thing is that I think we put this very weird bubble around passion, about following your passion, about career in academia being passionate. Like, that is not necessarily the case. People can do it just because. But the thing is, you do have to keep assessing while you're doing it, making sure that you do enjoy certain aspects or components of the research you're doing. But there's no doubt that if it becomes your life, there is a moment where you are going to burn out. Now, the thing is that I believe that passions are cultivated, not found. So you do have to kind of go into this thinking, well, how do I always improve my my passion? How do I improve my connection to this subject, to this area? And it may be that you do have to sort of like take breaks from it now and again, that you do have to explore different side avenues every now and again, but still keeping that main kind of stem of your research going forward. You may have side projects, side chats, going away to conferences, going away to different research groups, like whatever it is to keep that passion alive is so very, very important. And it's about cultivating it throughout your PhD. It's not that one day you wake up and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is what I want to do. It may start like that maybe, but keeping that up throughout the sort of like many years, up to 7, 8, 10 years of doing a PhD, it can just wear you down. So if you stop losing interest and you don't care for your research project anymore, maybe it's time for a little bit of a side deviation. Maybe it's time for a little bit of a break, whatever it is. But make sure that you're always cultivating the right environment for caring about your project. Yes. The last sign that I have seen in people that don't finish their PhD is that they do not rise to the new challenge that a PhD poses to them. Now, the thing is that to get to the beginning of a PhD, you've got to be very good at other things, about passing exams, not necessarily about doing research or failing or like doing your own thing without the guidance of like an ever-present course structure or supervisor. Like, that is a completely different thing and skill set to what you needed to get to the beginning of a PhD. So I have seen people who think that their PhD is going to be like a continuation of their master's or a continuation of their honours year or undergraduate. No, that is not it. If I see someone that comes into the lab or treats it like an undergraduate thing, quite often they are people that do not survive to see the end of their PhD, and they often get masters and do other things. So you do have to go into it knowing that it is a completely different set of skills that you need to bring to the table. You do have to learn them. You're not necessarily given them throughout your undergraduate or masters. So you do have to go and find those skills yourself. You have to go and rise to the new challenge. And that's not always easy, especially when the skills that got you there are no longer super valid for the thing to move forward. That's just the reality of it. So there we are. Learn, keep learning, keep learning, keep learning, PhD. So there we have it. There's everything you need to know about the signs that you will not complete your PhD. Let me know in the comments what you would add, and also go check out academiainsider.com. That's my new project where I've got my ebook, the Ultimate Academic Writing Toolkit, as well as my Insider Forum. Everything's going great over there. I think you'll love it. Go check it out. All right, I'll see you in the next video.